guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be an update for my Pan Those eyeshadows. You guys know this is one of my favorite projects to do, as well as one of my favorite projects to update you guys on. Of all of my updates for this year thus far, I feel like this is the least exciting one, unfortunately. So I have hit pan on 4 eyeshadows this past month, but not necessarily all that were part of this project. So if you guys are new to this project, this was created by Alexi, so I'll have her channel linked down below. She isn't doing this project. She hasn't done this project the last couple of years, but so many people have started to do this project. So if you like this style of video, definitely make sure to search the hashtag Pan Those eyeshadows, and there will be hours and hours and hours and hours of content for you guys to binge watch. I know these are some of my favorite videos to binge watch as well. So if you guys are interested in seeing the eyeshadows that I hit pan on this last month, then stay tuned. First, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing before you leave today. I do post a minimum of 4 times a week, so if that is something that interests you, don't forget to subscribe before moving on. And other than that, let's just jump into the video. All right, anyway, you guys, let's jump into it. So I did hit pan on 3 shades that I was not working on in this project this month. So I want to start with those. The first one comes from my Persona Identity 1 palette. You guys know I love this palette, and I have a pretty large pan in the shade Fearless right here. So this deep brown shade. I was actually using this in my brows for a while and was able to hit pan on this. I absolutely love this palette. It's one of my favorites in my collection, and I'm always happy to reach into this. So I'm glad that it's finally kind of showing the love that it gets, or showing the love that it deserves. It deserves to have pan in it. It deserves that kind of use. I also hit pan in another shade out of my BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette. I had 2 shades that I had already hit pan on, and this palette, I have a shade in here that is going in this project, so I'm going to cover that up. But the shade that I have hit pan on is this shade right here in the shade Trixie, and it is such a baby pan, you guys. I don't even know if you will be able to see the pan in the close-up because it's like a lighter champagne shade too. This is one of my favorite shades throughout my entire collection to use as an inner corner highlight. It is just like the perfect shade for me. And the pan sizes in this BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette are actually pretty deep. I also have pan on these 2 over here. Wow, I'm really bad at showing. So I hit pan on that, and then I also hit pan on the shade Violetta out of my ABH Mario palette, and this actually was the palette that I selected as like my choice palette. So in my project, I randomly select 5 shades, and then I myself personally select a 6th shade that I want to work on, but it's not random, I just choose. And the shade that I chose to work on was this one in the shade 5th Ave out of this palette. So I now have pan in these 4 bottom shades. I also have some pan in Muse as well as Marina, so I have a lot of pan in this eyeshadow palette. There are 12 shades in this palette, and I have pan on 5 of them. This is a palette that I might decide to do a pan that palette next year, and I would choose this palette to work on, because even though I love this palette and will hate to see the day that I use this up or have to retire it, it is getting old in my collection, and I want to make sure that I am just loving it until I actually do have to retire it. But I mean, this palette is so janky. Look at the front. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if like this part rips off of mine, just because this palette gets so much love and so much use. So now let's jump into the 5 shadows that were randomly selected for me. So this last month in July, I was feeling a little bit of project pan fatigue, if you will. So I kind of allowed myself in the month of July to just reach for whatever naturally felt right to me, and not necessarily force myself to pretty much exclusively use project pan items. I just let myself reach for whatever I was feeling for that day. Some days I did feel like reaching for items that were in my project pan. Other days I did not. So that is why you might see a little bit less usage than normal on some of these. So let's jump back into my BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette. I did end up reaching for this palette a total of 9 times. And the shade that I am working on is this shade right here, which is in the shade Ultimate. And it is a bright blue shade, but it is a shimmery shade, which I just find easier to work with in terms of colorful mattes. As you can see, it is a beautiful, beautiful shade. This has been in the project, I believe, 2 months. Yes. And I think 2 months. I don't know, you guys. I thought that this was the second month. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just been in the 1 month. I am really confused right now, but I don't have notes for where I was at in terms of usage as of the last update. So I'm just gonna say this is the first month that this is in this project. I have used it a total of 9 times, like I said. I do have rules in my project that if a shade is in my project for 3 months and I've used it 15 times or more, I can roll it out. So still a ways to go with this. And as you can tell, like, there's a little, like, very, very minuscule dip on this, but nothing too significant. And this one I just find hard to incorporate into like my everyday looks, and I don't always feel like playing around with this shade of blue when I'm playing with color. I more opt for like a purpley blue sort of look, like kind of like I have today. So this is going to be a tough one, you guys. This one's going to be tough. And speaking of blue shades and difficult shades to work on, I am also working on one of the blue shades out of the Natasha Denona Gold palette. And the shade that I am working on is this one right here. It's in the shade Aurora, and I reached for this a total of 3 times. It is a really, really pretty shade. Oh, it has such a nice sort of like just really smooth, almost wet-like texture. So there's just one swatch of it. As you can see, you can really sheer this one out. And in fact, I should really try to just wear this very sheared out with like a neutral transition. That might actually work to get away with at work. You can build this one up to be more intense. So as you can see, it's a really pretty shade. I honestly could do a look with both of these together and it would be beautiful, but it's just not a shade that I'm reaching for all that often. I really wish I had gotten like one of the matte browns or one of the greens. This is the first month that this has been in this project as well. And I've only reached for it 3 times, like I said. I have a feeling this is one that I'm going to roll out when I get to my 15 uses. I do have pan in this shade right here, and the pans are so incredibly deep on this palette. So I feel like I would have to use this way too many times to actually hit pan on it. So I have a feeling this is going to be one that rolls out after I hit the 3-month mark and the 15 use mark. I feel like I did blush on my nose today, and honestly a little bit on my chin too, and I just feel like I look kind of like I have a clown nose. Yikes. This palette, you guys, I also rolled in last month, and I thought I was going to get a lot more use out of this than I actually did. But on days that I was going to work, I reached for a more brown tone neutral. This is something that I definitely want to focus on this next month. So the shade that I'm working on is one that should be pretty easy to work with. I really enjoy this shade. I'm working on this matte shade in Vintage Taupe, but I only reached for this 1 time, and I actually really like this palette, so I'm surprised that I reached for it so little. But I do anticipate this will get a lot better use the next month. My Subculture palette. This one has been going, this is the 2nd month it has been in rotation, and I reached for this a total of 4 times this month. I reached for it 2 times last month, making it a total of 6 times. I'm working on the shade Electric, and as you can tell, I have a really nice dip going in this. I feel like I definitely could hit pan if I just put the effort in this next month, which is what I intend to do. So I'm hoping I will see pan in this next month. This is not my favorite palette to work with, but the shade Electric is my favorite shade in this palette. It's this really, really pretty, like, electric green shade. My only complaint is it does take some building up, and I always get hard pan in this shade, so I feel like I have to scrape and dig in it quite a bit. I tried to use this in my inner corner to work one day, and I had like a couple people come up to me and be like, what'd you do with your like inner corner? Is that like a green? Like, rude. Yeah. So I probably won't be wearing it to work again. But that was that shade. I forgot to swatch Vintage Taupe, so I'm just going to do a quick swatch of that. There is Vintage Taupe. It's just a really beautiful, like, lighter transition. I love the Dusty Rose sort of shade in that one as well. Oh shoot. Okay, last palette, you guys, comes from my Baby Got Peach palette. I rolled this out last update, but it got rolled right back in, and I actually wasn't mad about it because I do really love this palette. I'm working on this shade right here. My shades fell out, so this shade is in the spot Glaze It, but I don't actually think it's the shade Glaze It. It's just the one I'm choosing to work on because that's what I rolled, and that's the pan that was in the Glaze It spot at the time. So I actually reached for this 9 times last month. This is a beautiful peach shade. I really love this shade. There it is right there. The last eyeshadow that I was able to finally hit pan on in this palette was the shade Get Even right here, and it took me 25 uses to hit pan on this, so I still feel like I have a ways to go with this one. I also feel like I'm just making slower progress on this one than I did in Get Even, if I'm remembering correctly. So we'll see. I have a feeling it's going to take me between 25 and 30 uses to hit pan on this, but I do really enjoy this shade. And in fact, this with the Jackie Aina palette, I've been pairing the two of those a lot and really loving the looks that I've been creating. And they're very wearable. I wear them to work all the time, so I feel like with some consistent use, I could potentially roll this out next update. We will see. So that is my update on where I'm at with all of the shadows. Obviously, I don't have pan on any of these shades that were randomly selected for me, but I will be choosing one new shade from a palette of my choice to work on, and I decided to choose a shade out of the ABH Amrezy palette. I actually really love the color story of this palette, even though I know it feels like there's some repeat shades. I just haven't reached into this or shown it the love I feel like it deserves the last little bit here, so I've decided I want to work on this shade right here. This is in the shade Anastasia. And this is actually one of the shades I really wanted to buy the palette for. It is just a really beautiful, like, pink champagne sort of shade, and I feel like this will pair really well with the Natasha Denona Mini Retro shade. So I feel like I could pair those two together a lot to create looks, and honestly, if I wanted to amp up the look, I could even mix in the shade out of the ColourPop Peach palette to just really make the eye look super vivid. I'm actually really excited about this color story. I feel like the blue/green to pinks actually makes a really fun color palette. So I'm really excited to work on these shades. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. You guys will have to leave me a comment down below. How many eyeshadow pans did you hit in the month of July? I have hit over 20 eyeshadow pans throughout the year. I'll have everything linked in my description box about how many eyeshadow pans I've hit this year and my pan percentage. I'm sorry, I didn't come to this video prepared with that info right away, but I would love to hear what eyeshadow pans you hit last month. I am still on a road to 50. I'm trying to hit 50 eyeshadow pans this year. I feel like it's going to be really close. Really close. I'm going to need to have a couple of really good months where we hit a lot of eyeshadow pans. But I feel like there's palettes, like there's my Huda Coral Obsessions palette, which I've been reaching a lot for this summer, and I'm really close to a shade in there. So if I just, you know, look over my collection, see what shades I'm close to hitting pan on, I'm hoping I can reach my goal of 50. But that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch and for supporting my channel as you always do. I hope that you are having a wonderful day, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye!